My husband slapped me in front of the whole family just because I dared to read aloud his affair text message. But the real shock came after that. The sting on my cheek was a raw, physical manifestation of the emotional blow. The Easter gathering at David's sister's house, once filled with the promise of spring and familial warmth, had fractured into a tableau of stunned silence. Margaret and Robert, David's parents, wore masks of disapproval directed, predictably, at me. Michael, ever the fence-sitter, mumbled something about needing more coffee. Emily, however, watched with a shrewd, assessing gaze. Liam and Chloe, our children, were caught in the crossfire, their young faces etched with confusion and a dawning unease. The text, that carelessly cruel missive, "This afternoon is a bore. Can't wait to escape and actually enjoy myself later," had been the spark that ignited the truth I could no longer ignore. Months of David's increasing detachment, the hushed phone calls, the way his eyes would glaze over when I spoke, had culminated in this undeniable confirmation. "David," I had said, my voice trembling, holding the phone aloft, "who is this you're so eager to see?" His reaction was swift and brutal. The slap, delivered with a force that surprised even me, was a public declaration of his contempt. The aftermath within his family was a predictable skewing of blame. Margaret's sigh was theatrical. "Honestly, Sarah, making a scene on a holiday? So inconsiderate." Michael's attempt at neutrality fell flat. "Let's not jump to conclusions." But it was Patricia, David's aunt, who delivered the sharpest barb. "You always were prone to overreaction, dear. Perhaps if you trusted David more." Only Emily's gaze held a flicker of something else, a quiet observation that hinted at a deeper understanding. David, ever the manipulator, played the wronged party. See what I have to put up with? Constant accusations. But something had shifted within me. The years of trying to keep the peace, of smoothing over David's flaws for the sake of the family, had reached their limit. The shock of his betrayal, compounded by his family's predictable siding with him, had ignited a cold fury. "You're right, David," I said, my voice low and steady. "This is about unpleasantness, and it's time for a full accounting." I retrieved the heavy binder from the living room, Sterling Enterprises, confidential, gleaming ominously. The revelation of my majority ownership sent a tangible tremor through the room. David's blustering denial, his parents' stunned silence, Michael's wide-eyed disbelief. It was a stark reversal of the usual dynamic. Leaving them to grapple with this new reality, I walked out, the faces of my children, caught in the crossfire, a painful imprint on my mind. The days that followed were a blur of legal consultations and a growing sense of isolation. My own parents, when I finally confided in them, urged caution. "Are you sure about this, Sarah? Think of the children. Maybe David just made a mistake. Can't you try to work things out?" Their well-meaning advice, rooted in a generation that often prioritized appearances over personal happiness, felt like another weight on my already burdened shoulders. David, meanwhile, didn't take the news of my control over Sterling Enterprises lightly. The initial shock morphed into a furious retaliation. There were veiled threats, unsettling phone calls in the dead of night, even a couple of instances where I felt distinctly unsafe, the shadow of a strange car lingering too long outside my house. I suspected he had hired someone to intimidate me, a desperate attempt to regain control. Complicating matters further was the emergence of her, a woman named Chloe, the irony wasn't lost on me, who worked at David's company. She began sending me smug, taunting messages, painting herself as the wronged party, the one who truly understood David. Her audacity was breathtaking, a constant, irritating reminder of David's betrayal. But amidst this turmoil, my resolve hardened. I refused to be intimidated. I documented everything, every threat, every harassing message. Emily, David's sister, surprisingly became an unexpected ally. Appalled by her brother's behavior and the blatant injustice, she discreetly provided me with crucial internal company documents that further solidified my legal standing. The final divorce hearing was set. The courtroom buzzed with a tense energy. David arrived with a high-powered lawyer, his face a mask of forced confidence, Chloe clinging possessively to his arm, her expression a mixture of defiance and nervousness. My parents sat behind me, their faces etched with worry. Emily was there too, a silent pillar of support. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for seeing through pretense, listened intently as our lawyers presented their cases. David's lawyer argued vehemently about the unfairness of my majority stake, painting me as a manipulative wife who had secretly plotted to seize control. Then it was my turn. My lawyer presented the evidence, the initial investment, the loan guarantees, the stock distribution records, and then the messages from Chloe, the documented instances of potential intimidation. The tension in the room was palpable. David and Chloe exchanged nervous glances. Finally, the judge delivered her verdict. She upheld my majority ownership of Sterling Enterprises, citing the clear documentation. She also issued a restraining order against David based on the evidence of harassment. But the real drama unfolded after the official ruling. As we were gathering our things, Emily stood up. Her voice, clear and strong, cut through the murmuring courtroom. "There's something else the court should be aware of." She produced a series of emails and financial records. "These documents show that David has been systematically siphoning company funds into a private account for the past year. A significant portion of this money was used to fund his relationship with Ms. Chloe here, including the lease on her new apartment and several expensive gifts." The air in the courtroom crackled. Chloe's face, previously smug, now paled considerably. David's jaw dropped. The judge's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Caldwell? Ms. Chloe? Do you have an explanation for this?" David stammered, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. Chloe's hand flew to her mouth. Before either could concoct a lie, I stepped forward. "Your Honor, I also have something to add." I produced a recording from my phone, the audio filling the silent courtroom. It was David, speaking to Chloe. "Once the divorce goes through, we'll have access to everything. Sarah won't know what hit her." Chloe's voice followed, laced with avarice. "And that company is worth millions, right?" The judge's expression hardened. "Mr. Caldwell, Miss Chloe, your actions appear to constitute fraud and conspiracy. I am ordering an immediate investigation into these financial irregularities." A court officer approached David, his hand resting lightly on his arm. Chloe looked as if she might faint. Emily turned to David, her voice filled with a mixture of sorrow and disgust. "I tried to warn you, David. You wouldn't listen." My parents, their initial worry replaced by a quiet pride, squeezed my hands. As David was being escorted out, a broken, defeated figure, his eyes met mine. For the first time, I saw not arrogance, but a flicker of genuine regret. Chloe, abandoned and ashen-faced, tried to follow, but another officer gestured for her to remain. The implications of the financial investigation hung heavy in the air. Outside the courtroom, the spring air felt truly fresh. Emily hugged me tightly. "You did it, Sarah." My parents beamed. "We're so proud of you, dear." Liam and Chloe, who had been waiting with Emily, rushed to my side. "Mom, are you okay?" Liam asked, his voice full of concern. "I am now," I replied, a genuine smile finally gracing my lips. The shock of that Easter Sunday had indeed paved the way for a far greater shock: the public unraveling of David's deceit and the sweet taste of justice. The new chapter I had envisioned was no longer just a possibility. It had begun. The silence that descended in the wake of my departure from David's sister's house that Easter Sunday was a stark contrast to the forced joviality that had preceded it. It was the silence of a battlefield after the cannons have fallen silent, a void pregnant with unspoken accusations and fractured loyalties. My own home, upon my return, felt cavernous, the echoes of our shared life now mocking my solitude. Sterling Enterprises, though now operating with a streamlined efficiency under my sole direction, offered only a professional solace. The nights remained haunted by the ghost of what I thought we had. Then the siege began. My phone would buzz with relentless frequency, each notification heralding another digital lament from David. His voice, once laced with a casual authority, now dripped with a cloying remorse, each syllable a carefully crafted plea. "Sarah, I don't know what I've done." He'd sob into the receiver, the sound grating against my already frayed nerves. "My life is empty without you. Please, just tell me what I can do to fix this." "You had your chance, David," I'd reply, my voice flat, the words tasting like ash. "You made your choices." But he was relentless. Extravagant floral arrangements, their perfumed beauty almost suffocating, began to appear with unsettling regularity. Lilies, roses, tulips, each accompanied by lengthy, handwritten epistles filled with self-flagellation and promises of profound change. He became a fixture outside my office, a gaunt silhouette leaning against the brick wall, his eyes, when they met mine, brimming with a desperate, almost accusatory hope. He even attempted to use our children as leverage. "Mom says you're being mean to Dad," Chloe said one evening, her brow furrowed with confusion. "He says he misses us." I knelt before her, taking her small hands in mine. "Sweetheart, your father made some very hurtful choices. It takes time to heal from that. Right now, Mommy needs some space, and so do you and Liam. We can talk to him, but on our terms, when we're ready." The most unsettling encounter occurred one rainy Tuesday evening. The doorbell chimed, its polite melody jarring against the anxiety that had become my constant companion. David stood on my porch, drenched and shivering, his face a mask of anguish. "Sarah," he pleaded, his voice hoarse, "just let me in. Let me explain. I can't live like this." "There's nothing left to explain, David," I said, my hand instinctively moving to the security chain. "You showed me who you were." "No, you don't understand," he cried, his voice rising. That was a mistake, a moment of weakness. You're my wife, Sarah. We have a life together." "Had," I corrected him, the word sharp and final. I closed the door gently but firmly, the click of the lock echoing the finality of my decision. Unbeknownst to me, David's carefully constructed remorse was fracturing under the weight of my continued rejection, morphing into a dangerous brew of resentment and wounded pride. He couldn't reconcile his belief in his own inherent charm with my unwavering refusal. In his increasingly distorted mind, my steadfastness wasn't a consequence of his actions, but a deliberate act of malice. His desperation spiraled into a terrifying plan, one that targeted the most vulnerable part of my world: my parents. They had always offered David a quiet kindness, a steady acceptance that, in retrospect, he had never truly appreciated. Now they became pawns in his twisted attempt to regain control. The frantic call from Mrs. Henderson, my mother's neighbor, sent a jolt of pure terror through me. "Sarah, dear, I went over to check on Eleanor and Arthur, and the house. It's empty. The back door was just slightly open. It didn't feel right." My breath caught in my throat. My calls went straight to voicemail, a hollow digital silence that amplified my growing panic. Then, the chilling text message, impersonal and menacing, flashed across my screen from an unknown number. "Sarah, your parents are safe. For now. If you ever want to see them alive again, you'll come to the old ironworks on the Blackwood River. Alone. Tonight." My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear. The ironworks. A desolate, abandoned relic of the town's industrial past, a place that evoked a primal sense of dread. This was David. This was the abyss his desperation had led him to. But the months spent navigating the treacherous landscape of his betrayal had made me more resilient, more cautious. The unsettling feeling of being watched, the subtle threats that had punctuated the early days of our separation, they had kept me on high alert. Emily, my unexpected ally, her face etched with a grim determination to protect me from her brother's escalating madness, had been my confidant. "Sarah, you need to involve the police," she had urged, her voice tight with worry. "He's not thinking rationally." Following her advice, I had shared my growing fears with Detective Miller, a calm, steady presence who had listened with grave attention. Tonight, I didn't go to the ironworks alone. My call to Detective Miller was brief but urgent. Under the oppressive darkness of the rural night, a silent network of law enforcement converged on the dilapidated ironworks. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of rust and decay. My parents, their faces etched with terror, were bound to rusting metal pillars, their eyes darting nervously towards David, who paced like a caged animal, his phone clutched in his hand, his gaze fixed on the cavernous entrance, waiting for his captive to arrive. The raid was swift and decisive. The sudden intrusion of armed officers, their shouts echoing through the cavernous space, caught David completely off guard. His initial fury dissolved into a stunned disbelief as they moved in, their movements precise and efficient. My parents were freed, their relief a palpable presence in the tense air. As they led David away, his face a grotesque mask of rage and defeat, his eyes wild and accusatory, briefly locked with mine. The veneer of the remorseful husband had completely shattered, revealing the dangerous desperation beneath. The courtroom became the final stage for our unraveling drama. The prosecution laid out the case with chilling clarity. The kidnapping, the explicit threats, the documented history of David's manipulative and controlling behavior. His high-priced lawyer's attempts to paint him as a distraught husband driven by a misguided love fell apart under the weight of the evidence. My parents, their faces pale but resolute, testified with quiet dignity. Emily's testimony, filled with a sorrowful condemnation of her brother's actions, resonated deeply. The verdict, when it came, was swift and unequivocal, guilty on all counts. A collective sigh of relief swept through the courtroom. For me, it wasn't just the triumph of justice. It was the final severing of the chains that had bound me to David's destructive orbit. Chloe, implicated in assisting his increasingly erratic behavior, also faced legal consequences, her initial arrogance replaced by a stark fear. Outside the courthouse, the crisp air felt like a breath of fresh life. My parents embraced me tightly, their relief palpable. Liam and Chloe, their young faces etched with a newfound understanding of the danger we had faced, clung to my hands. As we walked away, leaving the courthouse and the specter of David behind, I felt a profound sense of closure. His desperate attempt to reclaim me had backfired spectacularly, leading to his ultimate downfall. The final dramatic act of our shared, painful story had concluded, and I was finally, truly free to step into the light of my own making. The fragile peace following David's arrest proved to be a cruel illusion. Like a persistent, toxic weed, his family's resentment began to sprout and spread, poisoning the very air around Sterling Enterprises and my hard-won sense of stability. They saw David not as a perpetrator of his own downfall, but as a martyr, a victim of my supposed cold-heartedness. And their grief, twisted by a fierce, misguided loyalty, metastasized into a vengeful crusade against me. The initial picket line outside Sterling Enterprises was a pathetic affair, a handful of disgruntled faces holding up hastily scribbled signs. But like a festering wound, it grew. Margaret and Robert, David's parents, became the ringleaders, transforming the sidewalk into their personal stage. Day after day, they arrived with reinforcements, aunts, uncles, cousins, each seemingly coached in the art of public grievance. Their performance was a relentless, theatrical barrage. Margaret would clutch her chest, wailing about her poor, maligned son, her voice amplified by a cheap, crackling megaphone that distorted her accusations into shrill pronouncements. "Bianca Caldwell, you've destroyed our family. You've taken everything from him." Tears, whether genuine or expertly feigned, streamed down her face, garnering sympathetic glances from passers-by initially unaware of the full story. Robert, his face a mask of righteous indignation, would harangue anyone who paused, painting a portrait of David as a devoted husband and son, unjustly persecuted by a heartless woman. He loved her. He provided for her. And this is how she repays him? By throwing him in jail and stealing his company. Their narrative was a masterful distortion of the truth, playing on simplistic notions of wronged families and the perceived ruthlessness of a successful woman. The local news, ever hungry for a human interest angle, lapped it up. Sound bites of Margaret's tearful pleas and Robert's angry denunciations filled the airwaves, often presented without context or any attempt to seek my side of the story. The online world, a volatile ecosystem of opinions and snap judgments, quickly followed suit. David's sister, Emily, the one who actively supported his smear campaign, became a minor online celebrity, her tearful live streams garnering thousands of views. "My brother is not a monster. He made mistakes, yes, but this woman is pure evil. She's tearing our family apart." Her emotional appeals, devoid of any acknowledgement of David's criminal actions, resonated alarmingly well with a segment of the online community who readily embraced the narrative of the wronged family. The digital backlash against Sterling Enterprises became a torrent. Hateful comments flooded our social media pages, calls for boycotts proliferated, and my personal inbox became a repository of vile accusations and threats. Then came the anonymous text messages, their veiled menace chillingly reminiscent of David's own intimidation tactics. "You think you've won, bitch? We'll make you regret this. Compensate our family, a substantial amount, or we'll camp outside your precious company until it crumbles." Another, more chilling message read, "Your kids have a predictable routine. Wouldn't want anything to happen to them." The weight of their relentless campaign, the constant barrage of negativity, and the looming threat to my children began to erode my carefully constructed peace. For a fleeting moment, the old Sarah, the one who always sought to avoid conflict, wavered. Perhaps a settlement, a quiet resolution, would make it all go away. But the sheer audacity of their lies, the blatant attempt to bully and extort me, and the chilling threat to Liam and Chloe reignited my resolve. They weren't grieving, they were waging war, and I would not surrender. I poured all my frustration and the cold, hard facts into a comprehensive online post. With meticulous detail, I dismantled their fabricated narrative, presenting the evidence of David's affair, his financial deceit, his abusive behavior, and the criminal charges he now faced. I attached court documents, police reports, and screenshots of his own incriminating messages, the undeniable truth laid bare for all to see. The response was gradual but powerful. As my post gained traction, the tide of public opinion began to shift. The inconsistencies in the in-laws' story became glaringly apparent when juxtaposed with the documented reality. The emotional appeals, once effective, began to ring hollow. The following morning, I braced myself as I arrived at Sterling Enterprises. Predictably, David's family was there, their numbers seemingly undiminished, their signs now even more aggressive and accusatory. Margaret, perched on a folding chair, was in the midst of another impassioned, tear-filled monologue, her voice cracking dramatically for the benefit of the small crowd that had initially gathered. But something had changed. A much larger crowd had assembled, and their expressions were no longer sympathetic. Many held their own signs, hastily made but pointed. "We stand with Bianca! Justice for victims! Stop the harassment!" As Margaret reached a particularly dramatic crescendo, clutching a tattered photograph of David, a voice boomed from the crowd. "You're lying! We read her post! You're nothing but bullies!" A chorus of agreement erupted. "Yeah! Leave her alone! Your son was a criminal! You should be ashamed!" The atmosphere crackled with a palpable shift in sentiment. The small, initially sympathetic audience had been replaced by an angry, informed mob. The air grew thick with hostility directed squarely at David's family. Undeterred, or perhaps simply too entrenched in their self-pity, Robert stepped forward, his face contorted in righteous fury. "You're all being manipulated! This woman is evil! She's turned you against us!" That was the spark. A barrage of shouts erupted from the crowd. "Shut up, you liars! Go home!" And then the projectiles began to fly. Overripe tomatoes splattered against their signs, their pulpy remains dripping down Margaret's face. Rotten eggs exploded against Robert's chest, the stench acrid in the air. Someone hurled a bag of flour, engulfing Emily, the live streamer, in a white cloud, silencing her tearful pronouncements. Panic finally flickered across Margaret's face. Robert sputtered in disbelief, wiping egg yolk from his jacket. They tried to continue their protest, their voices rising in indignant outrage, but they were drowned out by the jeers, the insults, and the increasingly aggressive rain of unpleasant debris. Just as the situation threatened to descend into outright chaos, the wail of sirens pierced the air. 2 police cars pulled up to the curb. Officers, their expressions stern, approached the beleaguered group. "All right, that's enough," one of them stated firmly. "We've received multiple complaints about a public disturbance." He gestured towards Margaret and Robert. "You two are going to have to come with us." Their protests were weak and quickly silenced as they were escorted towards the patrol cars, their faces a grotesque tableau of shock, outrage, and a dawning realization that their carefully orchestrated campaign had spectacularly backfired. Emily, still coated in flour, sobbed hysterically as another officer directed her towards the second vehicle. Watching from the relative calm of my office window, a weary but resolute sense of justice settled within me. They had sought to weaponize public opinion, but the truth, amplified by the very platform they had tried to exploit, had turned against them with a vengeance. Their prolonged and venomous campaign had ultimately led to their own public humiliation and the cold reality of police intervention. The immediate aftermath of David's dramatic downfall was a period of profound, almost surreal quiet. The relentless digital and physical siege orchestrated by his family abruptly ceased, the silence amplifying the lingering echoes of their vitriol. Sterling Enterprises, once a battleground of public opinion, slowly regained its professional composure. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could breathe without the weight of their manufactured outrage pressing down on me. My focus sharpened, honing in on the intricate workings of Sterling Enterprises. The company, my silent partner through the storm, responded to my renewed dedication with a vibrant surge of growth. Yet, the scars of the recent turmoil lingered, casting a shadow of doubt in the minds of some potential collaborators. Mr. Jian Li, a prominent tech investor known for his meticulous due diligence, regarded me with a cautious curiosity during our initial meetings. "Ms. Caldwell," he began one afternoon, his voice measured, "your company's projections are impressive. However, the recent publicity surrounding your personal life, it gives some of my partners pause. They worry about the stability of your leadership." I met his gaze directly, my voice steady. "Mr. Li, my personal life, while recently subjected to public scrutiny, has ultimately reinforced my resilience and my unwavering commitment to Sterling's success. The challenges I have faced have not weakened me. They have strengthened my resolve. My focus is, and always will be, on the growth and integrity of this company. Our performance speaks for itself." He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then a slow smile spread across his face. "Your directness is refreshing, Ms. Caldwell. Tell me more about your expansion plans for the Southeast Asian market." That initial hurdle overcome paved the way for many others. One by one, through honest conversations and a transparent display of Sterling's robust performance, I won over the hesitant, turning apprehension into enthusiastic partnership. Life outside the office settled into a rhythm of quiet determination. The prospect of romantic entanglement held no appeal. My heart, once so vulnerable, found a different kind of fulfillment in the tangible achievements of Sterling and the unwavering love of my children. Liam, now a thoughtful young man on the cusp of college, and Chloe, blossoming into a confident teenager, were my anchors, their resilience mirroring my own. Yet, the memory of my past pain remained a quiet undercurrent, a constant reminder of the vulnerability of others. Each year, the annual Sterling Enterprises Gala became not just a celebration of success, but a platform for giving back. I established a significant charitable fund, directing its resources towards shelters for women, escaping abusive relationships, and organizations dedicated to the well-being of orphaned children. During one visit to a local women's shelter, a young woman, her eyes still shadowed with trauma, asked me, How did you get through it? How did you rebuild?" I sat beside her, taking her hand. It wasn't easy. There were days I didn't think I could. But I learned that my worth wasn't defined by someone else's actions. I focused on what I could control: my work, my children, and helping others. You have that strength within you, too. The quiet conversations, the shared moments of understanding became a profound source of purpose. Years spun by, each marked by Sterling's continued ascent in the tech world and my deepening commitment to philanthropy. The city began to recognize not just the success of my company, but the impact of my journey and my unwavering dedication to making a difference. Local magazines profiled Sterling's innovative work and my advocacy for women's empowerment. Community leaders took note of my quiet but consistent influence. Then came the announcement, a feature article in the city's most prominent publication. Beneath a striking photograph, the headline proclaimed, "The 10 most influential women shaping our city." And there, among the names of groundbreaking scientists, visionary artists, and transformative politicians, was mine. Bianca Caldwell, the founder and CEO of Sterling Enterprises. The accompanying interview delved not only into Sterling's technological advancements, but also into my personal journey, my advocacy, and the quiet strength that had become my hallmark. The journalist asked, "Ms. Caldwell, looking back, what would you say was the most significant lesson you learned?" I paused, gazing out at the city skyline from my office window. That my story doesn't end with someone else's betrayal. It begins there. It's about finding your own voice, your own strength, and using it to build something meaningful, not just for yourself, but for others.